The Federal Reserve was created in 1913 and has unfortunately never been phased out. Since the creation of this institution, the US dollar has lost almost all of its purchasing power against real goods. It's only when you compare it to other currencies that it looks relatively strong. Oddly, the Federal Reserve is completely non-transparent, yet it has such a critical role in the financial system. Wouldn't you like to know what's going on behind the curtain? Well, you came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. I always talk about the Federal Reserve. I always talk about central banks. I show you their actions and what they are saying on those given days, but I never get into the details of what the Fed is. So this video is for all of those who want to know what's going on behind that curtain. I'm going to show you some information right away, go through it quickly, but I want to get to something at the very end, so stick with me. I promise it's going to be an interesting, jam-packed episode. Let's begin by taking a look at the overview. Now, this is directly from the Federal Reserve's own website, and they show us at the very top the U.S. Central Bank, the Federal Reserve System. Beneath that, we have the three key entities: Federal Reserve Board of Governors, the 12 Federal Reserve Banks, and the Federal Open Market Committee, or the FOMC. They talk about the 5 key functions here as well. So this is the Federal Reserve. They issue the currency. They are the ones who print the money, and they decide how much of it will be out there or not. So they work directly with the Treasury, who does the actual physical printing, but they decide everything. Now, what's interesting about the Federal Reserve is that they decide it in secret. And that's unusual, because normally you have something go through Congress or the Senate, or you have groups of individuals that gather together, you have meetings, but not the Fed. Everything is kept secret. So it's interesting to see how this institution operates. Now, you've heard all the ideas and the thoughts and the considerations before of what the Federal Reserve is, but I want to show you some information directly from the horse's mouth. This is one of the most important speeches you'll ever read in your entire life. If you have a few minutes, I think that you should read it for yourself. And that is Ben Bernanke, former chairman, back in 2002. He's talking about deflation, making sure it doesn't happen here. In this speech, he goes through talking about how the actions of previous instances, what they did, and one of those was devaluing the dollar 40%. So their aim, according to their own documentation, is to support the value of the currency, to stabilize it. But in fact, it has been the complete opposite. So this speech here is absolutely critical. If you want to find it for yourself, of course, all of these links will be in the description. But I will also just tell you, if you go to a search engine, you type in Ben Bernanke speech 2002, you will definitely get this right here. It's right on the Federal Reserve's own website. Then we have this. Janet Yellen, before she was chair, she made this statement: "If it were positive to take interest rates into negative territory, I would be voting for that." And this is very interesting. This is something that they're not really talking about publicly. The consideration that they would actually go into the negative territory was not really put through as a thought, was never really brought up to the public, to the financial media. And yet Janet Yellen is there saying she's in favor of it. Of course, they never officially brought the Fed funds rate down below 0, but I'm going to show you something today. This is known as the shadow federal funds rate. I've covered it here on the channel before. Essentially what happened was that the Fed funds rate was brought down to 0. And once that happened, all of their other models literally stopped working. Nothing made any sense anymore. At an interest rate of 0%, literally nothing made sense. You couldn't figure things out because you needed some level of interest rate in order to have these models work, in order to understand what was coming tomorrow. You use interest rates, but interest rates are at the floor. So they develop this, and you find that the shadow rate actually went to negative 3%. So that's the true rate at which interest rates were for a period of time. Quite interesting to see how far they are willing to go, even if it's not in front of our very eyes. Now, I want to show you something. I know that it might be a little too slow for some because I want to read a lot of it. I want to get through the major points in this, and perhaps you want to just put this video on, listen to my voice, and do something else right now. This is important to know. Please understand that. I hope that you will listen to the rest of this. I'm just going to go into it quickly. Andrew Yellen, this individual was an advisor to Ben Bernanke between 2010 to 2012, if memory serves correctly. So this statement here was written in 2016. So after that time that he had with Bernanke, he started coming out and talking about the Federal Reserve, speaking the truth about it. And this is a high-level individual. We are talking about somebody advising the chairman, okay? And he talks about reforming the Federal Reserve to ensure accountability, transparency, and good governance. And this is amazing to read this and understand what the Fed really is. The Federal Reserve is America's central bank, and its monetary policy decisions are crucial for the health of the economy. However, the Fed's governance structure was established more than a century ago and no longer ensures that the Fed serves the public interest. Unlike any other government agency, private banks have a direct role in governing the Fed. This governance structure elevates the priorities of financial institutions and large corporations over the needs of America's working families. Furthermore, its transparency and accountability are severely deficient, which impairs appropriate congressional oversight and undermines the public's trust in the Fed. It is time to move forward with a sensible, pragmatic, and nonpartisan approach to the Fed reform that preserves its independence and includes the following key elements. I'm not going to go through all the key elements, okay? I don't want you to fall asleep, but I will cover some information from them. I think he makes some great points. I don't think anything will ever change for it, but I think that we should be aware. When you pick up that dollar bill, you need to know what's really behind it. I think it's critical. I think it's so important that everybody, young and old, understand what the Fed is. The Federal Reserve was caught red-handed during the financial crisis, printing $16 trillion, and they were unaccounted for. Nobody talks about it, but it's there, it's proven, and so we move on. The Federal Reserve must be a fully public institution. Under current law, commercial banks are the legal owners of the 12 regional Federal Reserve banks, and they control 2/3 of the seats on the boards of directors of each regional Fed. This must change. Private bankers and Wall Street firms should no longer have extraordinary influence on the Fed's inner workings or policy decisions. The regional Fed banks should be made fully public entities, and all of the directors should be selected through the process overseen by the Federal Reserve Board and involving the elected officials in each Fed district. The process should ensure that the directors and the representative of the public in terms of the racial, ethnic, gender diversity, and educational background and professional experience. It goes on. Why are they not doing this? Of course, because they want their friends to be in power. They don't want it to be a free choice. They want elections. That's not right. The process of appointing regional Fed presidents should be transparent. It goes into setting the term limits for Fed officials and finishes off with align Fed transparency and accountability of the other institutions that are out there. Why did we have a whole voting process and a whole oversight and all this transparency in some areas, but that which controls the finances of the entire country is controlled by a basically private institution? Doesn't make a single ounce of sense, but you're not allowed to talk about it. It's not addressed. Audit the Fed can't even pass through Congress. We just want to know where the money's going. Nope, can't have it. If you want to know about the Federal Reserve, this book here is the best book ever written on the Fed. And there are many, I've read others, but this book here does it in such plain English. G. Edward Griffin wrote a masterpiece, as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, The Creature from Jekyll Island. If you want the book, if you want to flip through it anyway, just go to the link in the description. I'll put it there where you can go over on Amazon and look at it. This year, I think is the best because it's just so easy to read. It's a thick book, don't get me wrong, but definitely you want to go there and take a look for yourself. If you haven't read it already, this is like the top of my list on what you need to read. So that's all for this video. If you found it informative, please give me a thumbs up. When you give me a thumbs up, it helps to support this channel. So I do appreciate it very much. And last but not least, if you found this video informative, I know you'll find my books, The Money GPS, and my newer release, Global Economic Collapse, even more informative. If you want the financial education that was not taught to you in schools, then these two books will do just that. They will teach you what you need to know to make your own financial decisions. They will break it down from A to Z. You will know what you need to do with your own money. You will have a foundation that is better than anybody you know, including the people you take advice from at the bank. That's a promise. So you can take a look at these books at Amazon. There is a link in the description below. Take care.